police 911.
There's a Mercedes out here. Some kids are outside. I said that mom is in the car and that she's dead.
Well, the officer's out there.
It was a chilling Friday night, March 20th, 2015, when a routine 911 call turned into a nightmare that would haunt everyone involved. As the clock struck 11:50 p.m., the call came in, a report of a body discovered in the parking lot of Stonecrest Apartments. Officers rushed to the scene, led by Detective John Brown, a seasoned investigator with 3 years in the homicide department. Upon arriving, the grisly sight awaiting them made it clear this wasn't just another missing persons case. There, lying in the rear hatch of a 2001 Mercedes SUV, was the body of 34-year-old Michelle Lynn Spence, completely unclothed and discarded like an object.
Naked. 2 blankets covering her up.
Michelle's lifeless form immediately indicated foul play. Her keys and cell phone were missing, and the lack of any personal belongings around her only heightened the sense of mystery.
No keys, no cell phone.
And who's that gal?
Car is checked back to Spence, Michelle.
The victim, a single mother, was identified quickly as Michelle Spence, someone who had lived a quiet and predictable life until the tragedy that had just unfolded. Her children, 14-year-old Nino and 10-year-old Ryan, had been the ones to stumble upon their mother's body. In an agonizing turn of events, it was these 2 young boys, desperately searching for their mother, who found her lifeless body. Their cries for help were what ultimately alerted bystanders to call the police. As investigators examined Michelle's body, they confirmed the worst. Michelle had been strangled. The medical examiner estimated that she had been dead for approximately 20 hours before her body was discovered.
What do you want to do with the boys?
Gonna need them downtown.
See if they can fill in some blanks about mom and mom's behavior and see what the kids can tell us.
The kids are going to be tore up. They just saw their mom dead. But they are our best shot at this point of finding out what happened and who we're after.
What made this case even more disturbing was that Michelle's children were the ones to find her. Desperate to locate their missing mother, the boys had walked nearly 2 miles, heading south on 129th Street. They arrived at Stonecrest, where they knew Michelle had a friend, hoping to find some trace of her. But it wasn't until they spotted Michelle's car in the parking lot that they realized something was terribly wrong. The moment they looked inside, their fears were confirmed. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Michelle had lived a modest life, working as a dental assistant to provide for her sons. She had no known enemies, yet someone had lured her to that parking lot under mysterious circumstances. Detective Brown and his team began questioning everyone who might have known Michelle, starting with the boys. But it was the interview with Nino that would lead them into a web of troubling revelations.
Okay, so you guys are at Dad's house Thursday. Friday, come and go. Did you hear or talk to your mom? Is that unusual? Does you guys normally talk to her every day, or? Yeah.
Nino shared that Michelle had been in contact with an old friend, Renice Bramblett, a man who had been her boyfriend years before. Nino recalled that Michelle had suffered at his hands in the past, revealing a violent history between the two. Despite the abuse, Michelle had maintained contact with him, and on the day of her disappearance, Renice had even visited their home. With suspicions mounting, investigators turned their focus to Renice.
Renez, do you know his last name?
Bramlett.
How long has your mom known Renez?
Since I was like in 5th grade.
And what grade are you in now?
8th.
Okay. Did you guys ever make it to Renez's house or apartment?
No. I called him, but he never picked up the phone.
Especially after Nino mentioned that Michelle's sister, Stephanie, had noticed something odd. Renice had deleted his Facebook account shortly after hearing about Michelle's death. The case was far from over. As the investigation deepened, Detective Brown and his team knew they were just beginning to peel back the layers of Michelle's final days, and perhaps uncover the truth behind her tragic and untimely death.
Ken called me. That is Nino's father.
Okay.
The cops went to Ken's house and told Ken that they had found Michelle dead in her car.
Stephanie was convinced that Renice knew more than he was letting on. She firmly believed he was responsible for Michelle's murder and her reasoning was based on several unsettling details. As soon as she discovered Michelle was found dead in the back of her car, naked, she instantly knew it was Renice's doing. "I knew automatically right there," Stephanie said. "It was Renice. He's done this to her before." Stephanie provided more details about Michelle's 2013 assault than Nino had, and these revelations were deeply troubling. According to Stephanie, the two had gotten into an argument, and Renice had violently thrown Michelle into the back of his car. He tied her up with a scarf and kept hitting her whenever she tried to sit up. "I literally thought I was going to die that night," Michelle had said at the time, recalling the traumatic experience. Despite the violent attack, Michelle managed to escape from Renice, barely clinging to her life. She immediately called Stephanie, who rushed her to the hospital. Stephanie described how Michelle could barely walk, and the police were called to the scene, though they had forced her to leave the room. Despite the trauma, Michelle chose not to press charges, leaving Detective Brown with a critical question. Why would Michelle continue to stay in touch with Renice after such an assault?
She said he threw her in the back of the car and he tied her up with the scarf that she had around her neck. She said, "I was seeing black." She said, "Every time I'd sit up, he would hit me again." She said, "I literally thought I was going to die that night. It was bad."
According to Stephanie, the answer was clear. Renice had a way of manipulating Michelle, showering her with gifts and attention, keeping her coming back. "She likes the gifts and the money he's always giving her," Stephanie said. "He used to have flowers delivered to her every week at work." It was clear that Renice knew how to pull Michelle back in, despite the abuse. Stephanie also revealed that Renice had repeatedly harassed Michelle whenever he didn't get his way.
So why does she get back with him if
Because
this happened?
she likes the gifts and the money. He's always given her presents. He used to have flowers delivered to her every week at work. He keeps giving and giving and giving to her.
He refused to take no for an answer and went to extreme lengths to hurt her when she rejected him. He's flattened her tires multiple times, put sugar in her gas tank. "It's all about control," Stephanie explained. Michelle didn't want to give him what he wanted, and that set him off. Despite warnings from her family, Michelle continued her relationship with Renice. When Michelle was found dead, the circumstances surrounding her death eerily mirrored her previous attack. However, detectives needed more than suspicion to solve the case. They decided to dig deeper into Renice's history. In the investigation, they uncovered a disturbing pattern of domestic violence. Renice had previously served nearly 4 years in prison for assault and battery before being released in 2007, further raising suspicions about his involvement in Michelle's death. To gather more information, the investigators turned their attention to Renice's apartment. They hoped to find any clues that might link him to Michelle's murder. However, when they arrived at the apartment, Renice was nowhere to be found. After knocking and calling for him, the detectives realized that Renice had apparently left. Though he remained the prime suspect, the investigators knew they had to keep their options open. "Everything's pointing his direction, but I don't want to get tunnel vision and just focus on him," one detective remarked. "We need to consider every possibility."
Close the plate! Come to the front door!
It'd be nice if you could find some drag marks in the dirt and some blood.
No, there's nothing.
In their search for more evidence, the detectives canvassed the apartment complex, hoping someone might have seen something unusual. After hours of questioning, they were almost ready to give up when one neighbor provided an important clue. The neighbor reported seeing Renice moving out the day before Michelle's body was discovered, struggling with 2 large travel bags. This caught the neighbor's attention because of the difficulty Renice had with the bags. Though this new information was suspicious, it still didn't prove Renice's guilt. The detectives decided to further investigate his whereabouts by reconstructing his timeline. Renice had been seen leaving his apartment at 2 p.m., while Michelle's body wasn't discovered until midnight. If Renice had truly left town, it might serve as an alibi. But if he was spotted nearby later, it could place him at the scene of the crime.
His past history does raise suspicion, but that doesn't mean that he's the killer. Everything's pointing his direction, but I don't want to get tunnel vision and just focus on him, not look at anybody else.
Just as they were beginning to piece things together, a crucial new lead came from Michelle's sister, Stephanie. She contacted the detectives to inform them that Renice's Facebook page had been reactivated, showing that he was in Chicago. This raised a major red flag for the investigators. If Renice had no involvement in Michelle's death, why would he leave town so suddenly? The detectives now had a trail to follow. They knew that Renice had gone to Chicago, but they still didn't know how he had gotten there. His name wasn't on any recent flight bookings, and there was no record of him renting a car. The remaining possibility was that Renice had traveled by bus, so the detectives turned their attention to the local bus station. After scanning the parking lot at the bus station, the detectives discovered a green Cadillac. It was the car Renice was known to drive, but when they ran the license plate, they were shocked to find that it didn't match the registration for Renice's vehicle.
How about a green caddy right over here? Is that a caddy?
That's a caddy, dude, right there.
It's green.
I'm like,
Dude, you remember the tag number?
However, after checking the car's VIN number, they discovered that it was, in fact, Renice's car. He had swapped out the license plates, likely in an attempt to avoid detection. Further investigation revealed that Renice had boarded a bus to Chicago at around 2 p.m. on the day of the murder. This seemed highly suspicious, given that the body had not been found until later that night. The detectives began to focus even more on Renice, suspecting that his sudden departure could be connected to Michelle's death.
I'm looking to see if that guy got on any of the buses getting out of here. March 20th, in the afternoon. It appears that Mr. Bramlett caught the 2 o'clock bus out the 20th, headed for Chicago. Not a lot of folks, if they had nothing to do with anything, run for any other reason, change tags on your car, park your car, and then take a bus out, so.
In an effort to find more concrete evidence, the detectives secured a search warrant for Renice's car and apartment. They were looking for any clues, clothing, personal items, traces of Michelle's blood, anything that could confirm their suspicions. However, after an exhaustive search, they found very little. Renice's apartment was unusually clean, and there were no obvious signs that Michelle had been there. Still, the absence of evidence didn't rule him out as the perpetrator. The detectives now turned to Michelle's workplace, hoping her co-workers could provide additional insights into her relationship with Renice. They learned that Michelle and Renice had briefly dated, but she didn't have feelings for him and had broken up with him. However, Renice kept coming around, bringing flowers, presents, and lunches. Despite her discomfort, Michelle didn't seem to acknowledge that he was stalking her, dismissing it as harmless. Frustration mounted for the detectives as they struggled to find solid evidence. Despite everyone around Michelle believing Renice was responsible, they still couldn't prove it. However, just when it seemed like they had hit a dead end, Stephanie provided them with another lead.
I got onto her email account last night, and I went into her location history.
Okay, we will head your direction, and I can talk to you face to face.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
She revealed that she had accessed Michelle's Gmail account and found a crucial piece of information. Michelle's phone had last been recorded at a bus station just hours before her body was found. This GPS data pointed to the possibility that Michelle had been at the bus station around 1:47 p.m., just before her death. Determined to follow up, the detectives rushed to the bus station to investigate further.
Everything that we have so far is circumstantial. It's good stuff, but it's still circumstantial. If he's not guilty,
He sure done everything to make himself look good.
I would concur.
They were hoping this new lead would provide the breakthrough they desperately needed in the case. Connecting the dots. The investigation began with circumstantial evidence that began to paint a clearer picture of the events surrounding Michelle's murder. Michelle's phone records showed suspicious activity after her normal routine, which led detectives to focus on Renice Bramlett as a prime suspect. Phone records from both Michelle and Renice revealed that their phones traveled together after Michelle's death, pointing to Renice's involvement. Detectives were able to piece together a timeline that showed Renice likely killed Michelle, disposed of her body, and then tried to cover his tracks. Renice fled to Chicago after the murder, prompting investigators to secure a material witness warrant. They even tried to gather information from Renice's son, but their efforts to contact him directly failed.
You'll open up for me? That's it. Any questions for me, Mr. Bramlett?
You can see right there until we're ready to go. So.
After Renice was located and brought into custody, his story did not align with the evidence. Despite not confessing, his statements contradicted the facts, leading detectives to believe they had enough to charge him. The prosecution built its case based on digital footprints and circumstantial evidence. Renice's defense was based on a fabricated story about drug use and Michelle leaving to meet a dealer, but the jury saw through the lies. Renice was convicted of first-degree murder. Renice was sentenced to life without parole, bringing some closure to Michelle's family. Though the pain of her loss remained, Michelle's mother found comfort in raising her grandsons, holding on to the memories of Michelle's life and love.